The wind howled across the Ouachita Mountains, weaving through skeletal trees like an invisible mourner at an unmarked grave. The forest near Red Oak, Oklahoma does not forgive easily. Its silence speaks not of peace, but of a mission. On October 8, 2009, the Jamison family, Bobby, Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison, vanished without a trace. Their truck was found days later, abandoned and locked, its contents chilling. GPS, cell phones, $32,000, 0 cents in cash, and their emaciated dog barely clinging to life. Bobby Jamison had told friends he was being haunted, not in a metaphorical sense, but quite literally. Shadows watching him, spirits whispering through the walls of his home. In the weeks before their disappearance, he'd installed surveillance cameras around their house. Footage showed him and Sherilyn silently pacing back and forth to the truck, moving belongings in a trance-like state, as if under command. They never spoke. They never looked at each other. What could drive a family to wander into the dense Oklahoma wilderness with no supplies, no communication, and no plan to return? Law enforcement grasped at explanations: drugs, mental illness, even murder, suicide. But nothing fit. Not the money, untouched and untraceable. Not the eerie stillness left in their wake. Not the map found in Bobby's truck, marked with ancient Cherokee symbols no one could decipher. Months passed, then years. No bodies, no leads, just questions. Until November 2013, 4 years later, when skeletal remains were discovered less than 3 miles from where the truck had been abandoned. The bones were too weathered to determine cause of death. The area had been searched before, thoroughly, yet somehow the remains had only just been found, or returned. Investigators noted the odd arrangement of the bones, laid in a triangle, heads pointing inward. Some dismissed it as animal interference, others whispered of ritual. Behind the scenes, a retired detective on the case confided to a journalist that the position matched a protective symbol used in Appalachian witchcraft, meant to trap a spirit within. Sherilyn Jamison was known to keep a witch's Bible. Her friends described her as curious, even playful, with spiritual matters, but something changed in those final months. She scrawled cryptic messages on the walls of their home. She claimed their daughter spoke to an unseen entity named Emily, who lived in the corner of her room. Bobby, meanwhile, had begun writing a manifesto, half scripture, half plea, describing a coming reckoning and a dark presence attached to his bloodline. Among Bobby's notes was a reference to the 32nd marker, a location tied to Masonic lore and ancient American ley lines. The coordinates point to a rocky outcrop deep in the mountains, rumored to be the site of an indigenous altar used before European contact. The Choctaw and Cherokee avoided the area. Even today, locals speak of lights dancing there on moonless nights. Some say they've heard laughter, childlike but wrong. A geologist who visited the site in 2015 took magnetic readings and found anomalies, pulses of energy inconsistent with the surrounding terrain. Beneath the rocks, he discovered a hollow chamber sealed with an iron-bound stone. No one has opened it. No one dares. The Jamison family's last known GPS entry was just half a mile from that point. Even stranger was a photograph found on Bobby's phone. It had not been shared or uploaded. The timestamp matched the evening of their disappearance. In it, Madison stands in the woods, her face vacant, her eyes locked on something behind the camera. Her arms hang unnaturally at her sides, and behind her, barely visible in the shadows, is a second figure, tall, draped in something like bark or moss. Its face isn't right. Digital analysts could not explain the image. Attempts to enhance it only deepened the distortion. A facial pattern that defied symmetry, textures that didn't register as skin, cloth, or plant, as if the camera had captured something between states of being. When shown the photo, a Navajo elder reportedly said, "That is not for your kind. You should not have seen her." The FBI closed the case citing undetermined causes. But privately, several agents left notes, warning their successors not to dig deeper. One memo simply read, "Layfield Protocol applies." No one knows what the Layfield Protocol is. It does not exist in public record. The Jamison home, since demolished, was said to have a crawl space that didn't appear on any blueprints. One paranormal investigator who entered claimed the air changed, suddenly thick, metallic. He found a child's drawing hidden behind the insulation, a crude figure with long limbs and black eyes, standing over 3 sleeping stick figures. The drawing was titled Her. What happened to the Jamison family may not have begun in 2009. In fact, Bobby's great-grandfather was once a land prospector in the region, and some believe he stole sacred ground during a purge in the 1920s. The land the Jamisons sought to buy was tied to that legacy. A circle unbroken. There are those who now whisper that the Jamison case was never about a disappearance. It was a rebalancing, a reclamation. The cash in the truck, the cameras, the symbols, the unspoken ritual. It was a family trying to break something older than themselves. And failing. But the question lingers. Why the cameras? Why the silence? Why the trance-like behavior in the days before they vanished? Some theorize possession. Others believe they entered willingly into a pact, an ancient contract encoded in a language no longer spoken, but still understood in dreams. Footsteps. That's what the ranger said he heard near the site last year. Barefoot. On frost. No tracks, no heat signature, just the sense of being followed. He never returned to that part of the forest. His last radio message. I think they're walking again, all 3. This isn't just a story of a missing family. It's a doorway. A fracture in time, place, and perception, where the veil thins and something else bleeds through. The Jamisons were not the first, and they will not be the last. And yet, there remains one more piece. One object never reported by police, but described by a whistleblower in a now-deleted forum thread. A small, obsidian disc found beneath the driver's seat, smooth, warm to the touch, carved with spirals that pulse faintly under moonlight. The disc has since vanished. So has the whistleblower. They say the wind carries voices at night near Red Oak, that if you listen long enough you can hear a child giggle, a woman whispering prayers, and a man repeating the same phrase over and over. And somewhere in that tangle of trees and time something begins to stir again. It waits beneath the roots where no sun has ever touched. By the time search crews returned to the mountain woods in 2014, the trees had grown unnaturally dense, as though something ancient was reclaiming what was once its own. The underbrush curled like fingers, tangled and aggressive. The air hung thick, unmoved by wind. Those who wandered off-path spoke of disorientation, sudden panic attacks, and a strange sound, like distant humming, too low for the human throat. One volunteer, a seasoned tracker named Harlan Jace, disappeared for 3 hours during the sweep. When he was found, he was kneeling at the same triangle of bones, later confirmed as the Jamisons, muttering in a dead dialect of Choctaw. His grandfather had been full-blooded. Harlan never spoke the language in life. When asked what he saw, he whispered only, "The eye beneath the hill." It opened. The supposed eye became the obsession of a fringe group of researchers calling themselves the Threshold Watchers. Using satellite scans, they claimed to detect geometric patterns under the region's topsoil, pentagonal alignments stretching over 20 miles, pointing inward toward the Jamisons' last known location. One point intersected directly with a cave system long sealed by landslides. In March 2015, 2 members of this group descended into one of the reopened chambers. They never resurfaced. Their equipment, found outside the cave, contained strange readings. Magnetic inversions, temperature anomalies, and a single audio file. The sound was 7 seconds long. A child's voice, repeating one phrase, "We're still here." Curiously, the voice did not match Madison's recordings. A forensic linguist analyzed the tone and cadence, concluding that the speaker was not a modern child. The structure of the sentence was primitive, almost ritualistic. Some theorized it was an echo, a ghost not just of the Jamisons, but of something older, long forgotten by human memory. Sherilyn's Witch's Bible surfaced in an online auction 6 months later. Its pages were filled with illustrations, veiled figures, spirals, a tree with its roots wrapping a human skull. Hidden within its spine was a photograph no one could explain, an overhead shot of the Jamison family sitting in the woods looking up at the camera, yet the image was clearly taken after their disappearance. Bobby's eyes were completely white. Who took the photo? Who kept it hidden? And why did the original seller of the Bible vanish without collecting payment? The man's last email was a single sentence. "They are not gone. They've changed form." Authorities dismissed it as a hoax, but the few who've studied the Bible in person refused to touch its ink more than once. The Cherokee elders of the nearby Talihina region reluctantly broke their silence. One elder, known only as Old Blue, claimed that a kaya, a watcher spirit bound by pact, once guarded that mountain ridge. It was fed by loss, sustained by sorrow, and rarely awakened unless summoned. When shown the triangle formation of the Jamison bones, he turned away and said, "That is not a death, that is a debt repaid." Meanwhile, patterns began to emerge in other states, families disappearing under similar circumstances, empty cars, cash untouched, electronics intact. One case in Arkansas mirrored the Jamison incident precisely. In all cases, symbols were found etched into nearby stones. Spirals, triangles, crude human forms with missing eyes. Whispers of a triangulum cult began circulating online. Users on encrypted forums claimed they were trying to map all known silent triangles, zones of ancient sacrifice or temporal instability. Strangely, many of these sites intersected with known fault lines or magnetic anomalies. The theory: something beneath the earth is feeding, shifting, reaching. In 2017, a journalist named Evan Castor claimed to have decoded Bobby Jamison's final notes using a cipher derived from ancient Gnostic texts. What he uncovered was terrifying: references to a mirror forest, a realm where time loops and memory collapses. Bobby had allegedly found writings about a forgotten civilization that used such forests as gateways, not between places, but between realities. Shortly after posting his findings, Evan was reported missing. His apartment showed signs of struggle: burn marks in circular patterns on the floor, mirrors shattered inward as if imploded from the other side. His laptop played a single repeating video file, Madison's face slowly morphing into something ancient and unrecognizable. The final piece of the puzzle came not from the Jamison case, but from a declassified satellite scan released by accident in 2019. The image showed a brief electromagnetic burst near Red Oak, lasting only 0.73 seconds. The shape of the burst? A perfect equilateral triangle, with a black void at its center. A void that seemed to absorb all light, all matter, all presence. Scientists dismissed the scan as a glitch, but 2 physicists who reviewed it later resigned from their positions. One was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after carving the phrase "she knows the way back" repeatedly into the walls of her office. The other has not been seen since. A new theory has emerged, that the Jamison family didn't die in the forest. They crossed over, not in death, but in direction, as if they were pulled sideways through reality into something adjacent, parallel, darker. Their fate wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. Locals now report sightings, figures at the edge of the woods, pale and still, always in threes, a man, a woman, and a child. But their eyes are wrong, they do not blink, they do not move until you look away, then they're closer, always closer. What if the Jamisons were never meant to be found? What if their disappearance was not a mystery, but a message, a fragment of something older, echoing back through ley lines and bloodlines, trying to awaken those who still listen? Some believe the original site, the so-called 30-second marker, is activating again, that beneath the soil something stirs, something remembers. And if so, the Jamisons were only the first offering, not the last. And now, in the dead heart of Oklahoma, a new triangle has formed. 3 hikers missing, 3 bones found. A camera recovered with footage corrupted into a black spiral that expands infinitely when zoomed. And deep in the background something moves. He makes waking. By 2020, the story of the Jamison family had become more than a cold case. It had become a warning. But warnings are often ignored, especially when they wear the mask of folklore. Local news stations treated the disappearances as unrelated tragedies, but underground researchers, those who track what mainstream science refuses to see, saw a pattern, and in every pattern, a pulse. Satellite thermal imaging began picking up heat blooms near the original Jamison site. Odd, given the lack of tectonic or geothermal activity in the region. These pulses occurred at irregular intervals, always in threes, always in triangles. One expert in geomagnetic fields described the phenomenon as like a beacon calling to something not from here, or not from now. Then came the Black Spiral incident. A drone enthusiast named Mason Griggs flew his modified quadcopter over the Ouachita range and uploaded his footage to a private server. He captured what appeared to be a perfect spiral burned into the treetops, a 70-foot-wide clearing where the foliage had not died but vanished entirely. The video abruptly ends as the drone's sensors flatline. Mason was later found wandering the woods barefoot, eyes rolled back, repeating a single phrase. "She showed me the second door." The phrase "second door" sparked immediate alarm among the threshold watchers. Their founder, an ex-archaeologist named Ivor Kane, claimed that in pre-Mayan codices, burned by the Spanish during the 16th century, there were depictions of dual gateways, one for the sun and one for the forgotten. The second door, he argued, was never meant to be opened by humans. Kane disappeared 3 days after publishing a digital scroll titled The Jamison Alignment. Within it, he drew connections between the family's disappearance, the mountain geometry, the Cherokee death rituals, and ancient Sumerian texts referencing the House of Tri-Light, a place where the dead wait sideways through time. His final entry read, "The child was the offering. The parents were the keys." Cryptographers later found that embedded within the scroll's image files was a sequence of sounds, ultra-low frequencies nearly inaudible to the human ear. When enhanced and played aloud, several listeners reported headaches, nosebleeds, and, most disturbingly, visions. One man described seeing a triangular doorway open in a wooded glade, behind which stood 3 figures with blank faces and open mouths, screaming without sound. Across the internet, a new symbol began appearing. 3 concentric triangles, rotating counterclockwise, enclosing an eye without a pupil. The symbol began showing up in grainy footage from game trail cameras, etched into old church ruins, and, most chillingly, burned into the bark of trees near new disappearance sites. One carving, found in Arkansas, was still warm to the touch when discovered. Meanwhile, a former FBI agent known only as Dawson leaked files from the original Jamison investigation, redacted pages that referenced a secretive initiative called Project Echo Route. This program, launched in the 1980s, was a government-funded experiment into acoustic mapping of pre-human memory fields. One test site was near Red Oak. The documents suggest the Jamisons may have encountered something residual. A memory not theirs, but still alive in the land. A briefcase found near a dry creek bed in 2021 was traced back to a missing local priest, Father Emil Bain, who had been researching Cherokee burial rites. Inside were photographs of petroglyphs never before recorded. Spirals nested inside humanoid forms, mouths agape, arms raised. In the corner of one photo, partially obscured, was a child's hand. Madison's Father Bain's final notes were written in a blend of Latin and Old Muskogee. Translated, they form a prayer, or perhaps a warning. Beneath the stone mouth she sleeps. Beneath the third triangle she wakes. Do not speak her name. Do not answer when she knocks. Elsewhere, an independent journalist investigating the Jamison mystery stumbled upon a cave marked with handprints, not painted but burned into the stone. No scorch marks, no residue, just charred impressions that could not be scraped or sanded away. Deep inside the cave he found a wall, etched with a single phrase in dozens of languages, many extinct. 3 went in, 1 watches, 1 listens, 1 walks again. When the journalist posted his findings, his IP address was bombarded with requests from military servers. His website was shut down within hours. The footage has never resurfaced, but some believe copies exist on the dark web, protected by an encrypted protocol called the third pattern. A reference to the triangular geometry found around the Jamison remains? That same year, in nearby Texas, a mother and daughter vanished during a nature hike. When search teams arrived, they found 2 things: the family's tent arranged into a perfect triangle, and a child's doll sitting upright at the center, its face scraped clean, its mouth stitched shut with black thread. All signs point back to the Ouachita Mountains, where it is said the veil between this world and the next does not tear, but thins. Some believe the Jamisons were lured there. Others argue they were guided, not by madness, but by a signal. One that calls to certain bloodlines, certain minds, certain memories. The soil tests near the original Jamison site now show strange fluctuations, metallic traces that suggest alchemical interference, yet no lab can replicate them. The same trace compounds were found in the burned handprints, the triangle clearings, and even in the ink of Sherilyn's witch Bible, as if the very elements are part of something sentient. Now, reports flood in weekly, sightings of a woman in white walking the forest edge at dusk, always barefoot, always just out of reach. Children cry out when they see her, adults fall silent, cameras glitch, and always, the triangle appears again. And then there's the sound. The one only the dogs seem to hear, whimpering, hiding, refusing to enter the tree line where the Jamisons were last seen. Experts call it fear conditioning. But what could condition instinct? What could make the bones of beasts remember? Soon something will happen again. The triangles are tightening, the pulses are increasing, and somewhere, just beyond the reach of rational thought, she is almost through. And what waits on the other side is no longer patient. They were the keys, now who is next? By late 2023, the land had gone silent again. No birds, no wind, just stillness. A stillness that throbbed. But silence is never absence. It's a waiting breath. The forest surrounding the Jamison site was now cordoned off under the guise of ecological study. Locals weren't fooled. Drones were banned. Men in unmarked trucks parked at night and left before dawn. Cameras captured nothing. But the trees began bending eastward, toward a point no one could see. Then the dreams started. Hundreds of people across the southern Midwest began reporting identical visions. A black triangle rising from the earth, a child's laughter echoing from beneath it, and a woman's face stitched into the bark of a tree. All who dreamt it experienced a nosebleed upon waking. Several described a burning taste in their mouths, salt and copper. One of them, an artist named Kellen Reed, began painting compulsively. His walls became covered in overlapping triangles, spirals, and faceless figures, hovering above families lying prone in the dirt. In the center of every canvas, one image repeated: Madison Jamison, her eyes hollow, holding a stone disc that bled. Soon after, Kellen vanished. His last message, scrawled on his mirror, read, She is neither spirit nor flesh. She is memory, and she's waking inside us. Authorities kept quiet, but there were rumors. A private task force sent to the 30-second marker had never checked back in. Their GPS trackers all blinked offline at the same moment, precisely 3:33 a.m. The only thing recovered was a body cam with 12 minutes of corrupted footage. When decrypted, it revealed brief flickering images of stone columns, floating embers, and 3 figures, motionless, watching. Paranormal researcher Armand de la Torre published a forbidden manuscript days before he died. He claimed the triangle is not just a symbol, it's a mechanism, a kind of spiritual algorithm embedded in the oldest parts of the human brain. When activated, it opens an internal path, not through space, but through consciousness, through self. Armand's manuscript contained a chilling statement. They were chosen not for what they knew, but for what they carried. The child was not the key, she was the code. Beneath those words, written in blood or ink, was a phrase, repeated 9 times. 3 went in, 1 stayed behind, 1 became many. Psychics, mediums, and remote viewers began dying or going mad. Each had claimed to see the Jamisons, but not as they were. They described them as vessels, hosts. Madison, no longer a child, but something ancient wearing a child's shape. Sherilyn, weeping as her voice channeled languages not spoken in this dimension. Bobby, still silent but humming. Back at the site, satellite scans revealed something impossible. The triangle at the center of the geometry was growing. What had once been 3 miles in radius was now 5. Trees around the zone showed impossible growth patterns, limbs twisting in spirals, bark splitting to reveal geometric scars. A final expedition was greenlit. A private group of rogue academics, occultists, and intelligence defectors. They called themselves the Third Path. Their mission: enter the pulse zone, find the source, close the breach. They brought no electronics, only notebooks, bone talismans, and relics of unknown origin. They were never heard from again, except for 1 note scrawled and nailed to a pine tree outside the triangle. It read, "The seal was never broken, it was invited." 3 weeks later, seismic readings under Red Oak registered a sound, not a tremor, not a quake, but a voice. Caught on Deep Earth sonar, slowed and inverted, the message became clear. She walks the triangle now. The girl is no longer the girl. Then the spiral returned, carved into the sky itself. Witnesses captured it at 2:00 a.m., a massive, slow-rotating spiral of clouds above the woods, lit from within by a light source with no origin. No stars, no sound, just a voice in every mind. You remembered me. Every pattern has repeated, every door has aligned. The Jamisons were not a tragedy, they were a signal, a ritual played backwards. A family folded into geometry and offered to an idea older than form. And now, something new has begun. Because 3 more children went missing this week, in 3 different states, all in places marked by the triangle. In each case, their parents claimed they walked away smiling, like they were following someone they knew. And beneath the forest, beneath the stone, beneath the human, something has opened its eye. It is no longer asking, it is remembering, and it is waking. She is here.